Chapter 3, in which a witch accidentally magics an infant. At the center of the forest was a small swamp, bubbly, sulphury, and nauseous, fed and warmed by an underground, restlessly sleeping volcano and covered with a slick of slime whose color ranged from poison green to lightning blue to blood red, depending on the time of year. On this day, so close to the day of sacrifice in the Protectorate, or Star Child Day everywhere else, the green was just beginning to inch its way toward blue. At the edge of the swamp, standing right on the fringe of flowering weeds growing out of the muck, a very old woman leaned on a gnarled staff. She was short and squat and a bit bulbous about the belly. Her crinkly gray hair had been pulled back into a thick, braided knot with leaves and flowers growing out of the thin gaps between the twisted plaits. Her, her face, despite its cloud of annoyance, maintained a brightness in those aged eyes and a hint of smile in that flat, wide mouth. From certain angles, she looked a bit like a large, good-tempered toad. Her name was Shan, and she was the witch. "Do you think you can hide from me, you ridiculous monster?" she bellowed at the swamp. "It isn't as though I don't know where you are. Resurface this minute and apologize." She pressed her expression into something closely resembling a scowl. "Or I will make you." Though she had no real power over the monster himself, he was far too old. She certainly had the power to make the swamp cough him up as if he were nothing more than a globe of phlegm in the back of the throat. She could do it with just a flick of her left hand and a jingle of her right knee. She attempted to scowl again. "I mean it," she hollered. The thick water bubbled and swirled, and the large head of the swamp monster slurped out of the bluish green. He blinked one wide eye and then the other before rolling both toward the sky. "Don't you roll your eyes at me, young man," the old woman huffed. "Witch," the monster murmured, his mouth still half submerged in the thick of waters of the swamp. "I am many centuries older than you." His wide lips blew a bubble in the algae slick. "Millennia, really," he thought, "but who's counting?" "I don't believe I like your tone." Shan puckered her wrinkled lips into a tight reset in the middle of her face. The monster cleared his throat. "As the poet famously said, dear lady, I don't give a rat's." "Glurk!" the witch shouted, aghast. "Language!" "Apologies," Glurk said mildly, though he really didn't mean it. He eased both sets of arms into the muck at the shore, pressing each seven-fingered hand into the shine of the mud. With a grunt, he heaved himself into the grass. This used to be easier, he thought, though for the life of him he couldn't remember when. "My dear Shan," Glurk said, feeling a rumble deep in his chest which he hoped sounded imposing and dramatic, and not like someone who was simply coming down with a cold. "He is also older than you are, and it is high time. Oh, you know what I mean. And anyway, I promise this matter. For 500 years, give or take a decade or two, that dragonling has persisted in this delicious, fed and perpetuated by you, my dear. How is this helping him? He is not a simply enormous dragon. At this point, there is no indication that he ever will be." There is no shame at all in being a perfectly tiny dragon. Size isn't everything, you know. He is ancient and honorable species, filled with some of the greatest thinkers of the seven ages. He has much to be proud of. His mother was very clear, Shan began, but the monster interrupted her. In any case, the time is long past that he know his heritage and his place in the world. I've gone along with this fiction for far longer than I should have. But now, Glurk pressed his forearms to the ground and eased his massive bottom under the curve of his spine. I don't know, my dear. Something has shifted. A cloud passed over his damp face, but Shan shook her head. Here we go again, she scoffed. As the poet says, oh, ever-change earth. Hang the poet. Go apologize. Do it right now. He looks up to you. Shan glanced at the sky. I must fly, my dear. I'm already late. Please, I'm counting on you. Please be careful, he said, his voice thick. I have been beset of late by troubling dreams. I worry about you when you are gone. Shan raised her eyebrows and leaned his face away with a low grumble. Fine, he said. I will perpetuate the fiction for our friend Virian. The path to truth is in the dreaming heart, the poet tells us. That's the spirit, Shan said. She clucked her tongue and blew the monster a kiss, and she valuated up and forward on her staff's fulcrum, sprinting away into the green. It didn't take long for the free cities to treat the yearly arrival of the witch as something of a holiday. The children she brought with her, their skin and eyes bright with starlight, were seen as a blessing. Shan took her time selecting the proper family for each child, making sure their characters and inclinations and senses of humor were a good match for the little life that she had cared for over the course of such a long journey. When Shan arrived at the grove, there was no baby to be seen, but it was still early, and she was tired. She went to one of the craggy trees and leaned against it, taking in the loamy scent of its bark through the soft beak of her nose. A little sleep might do me good, she said out loud. And it was true, too. The journey she'd been on was long and taxing, and the journey she was about to begin was longer and more taxing. Best to dig in and rest a while. And so, as she often did when she wanted some peace and quiet away from home, the witch Shan transformed herself into a tree, a craggy thing of leaf and lichen and deep grooved bark, similar in shape and texture to the other ancient sycamores standing guard over the small grove, and as a tree she slept. Well, she said, there's no use looking at me like that. I can't bring you back to where you were. That's all gone now, so you might as well forget about it. Oh, hush now, for the child began to whimper. Don't cry. You love the place where we are going. Once I decide which city to bring you to, they are all perfectly nice. And you love your new family too. I'll see to that. Well, don't ask me, she said. I have no idea why you were left in the middle of the woods. I don't know why people do half the things they do, and I shake my head and the other half, but I am certainly not going to leave you here on the ground to feed some common toad. You've got better things ahead of you, precious child. And the baby ate and ate and ate. And suddenly she shuddered and buckled in Sean's arms, and she cried out once, and very loud, and then she gave a contented sigh, falling instantly asleep, pressing herself into the softness of the witch's belly. Greedy little thing. In any case, the facts of the matter were as clear as the moon sitting brightly on the tops of the trees. The child had become in magic. There was no doubt about it. And now things were more complicated than they had been before. The baby breathed deeply through her nose. A tiny smile quivered in the center of her rosebud mouth. Shan felt her heart leap within her, and she cuddled the baby close. Luna, she said, your name will be Luna, and I will be your grandmother, and we will be a family. And just by saying so, Shan knew it was true. The words hummed in the air between them, stronger than any magic. She stood, slid the baby back into the sling, and began the long journey toward home, wondering how on earth she'd explain it to Glurk. Chapter 4, in which it was just a dream. You ask too many questions. No one knows what the witch does with the children she takes. No one asks this. We can't ask it, don't you see? It hurts too much. Fine, she eats them. Are you happy? No, that's not what I think. My mother told me she ate their souls and that their soulless body have wandered the earth ever since. Unable to live, unable to die, blank-eyed and blank-faced and aimless walking. I don't think that's true. We would have seen them. Don't you think? We would at least have seen one wander by. After all these years, my grandmother told me she keeps them as slaves, that they live in the catacombs under her great castle in the forest and operate her fell machines and stir her great cauldrons and do her bidding from morning till night. But I don't think that's true either. Surely if it was, at least one of them would have escaped. In all these years, surely one person would have found a way and all come home. So no, I don't think they are enslaved. Really? I don't think anything at all. There is nothing at all to think. Sometimes I have this dream about your brother. He would be 18 now. No, 19. I have this dream that he has dark hair and luminous skin and stars in his eyes. I dream that when he smiles, it shines for miles around. Last night I dreamed that he waited next to a tree for a girl to walk by, and he called her name, and held her hand, and his heart pounded when he kissed her. What? No, I'm not crying. Why would I cry, silly thing? Anyway, it was just a dream.